Troy Johnston, welcome to Hoops and Homers. How are we doing this fine, first Friday of the new year, huh?
First Friday of the new year. I'm very excited for, a nice 2026 new start to the year. It's cold and rainy here in Seattle, but, I wish I was having a nice, snowy Denver sunny day right about now.
Yeah, we also kind of wish we'd get some snow. We haven't had much snow even over here for the last few weeks, so you might be a little bit disappointed that we're kind of as disappointed as you are, even though the weather's been pretty nice.
That's hilarious. Are they getting snow in the mountains like Aspen, Breckenridge, those areas?
No, actually, that's even more disappointing. I have a few friends who are big skiers, and they're like, the runs so far this year are not good, just not enough natural
Oh,
powder.
oh no. All right. Well, I didn't know that. That's news to me.
I know. Hopefully we get it sometime soon. Hopefully it doesn't all come at the beginning of baseball season though, like March, April, because you don't you don't want to be
Have a
playing.
couple. You don't have rainouts. You have snowouts.
Yeah, that happened here a few years ago. There was like an opening day we had against the Braves, and it was like snowing the first like few innings of the game. It happened last year too, I think. It's just crazy. Not a fun situation.
I've actually played in that in when I was in college in at BYU. I played in the snow in Utah, and then up in Spokane, we would actually have practices in the snow. So I'm not new to it, but of course, playing in Florida for the last 6 years, it's definitely different.
Just a tad bit, yeah. Inside, sea level, a lot of humidity. Yeah, completely different vibe. But sounds like you've been pretty busy this offseason with baseball. Looks like you were playing in the Dominican League. Is that correct?
I just finished my tenure there. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting it to be. I kind of went down to get some work in, do different stuff, and it wasn't the same experience that I had last year, but of course I thank them for everything that they've done for me, and they've always been very kind to me down in the Dominican. But even last year, I mean, I spent 4 whole months, 5 whole months, pretty much the whole off season there, and I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the playoff baseball and how every game mattered down there. Kind of like in the big leagues. Even in the playoffs, we were watching in October, November. It's just different baseball, and of course it's a different way to play baseball.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious what the largest difference between that and MLB is, because I know there are a few other MLB guys that go down there to play in the wintertime when they have the opportunity. What's the biggest difference between those two styles of competition from your perspective?
So, if you've ever played in the Dominican, you know that the ball does not fly. So it's not like Coors Field where you're down by 4 runs and 2 home runs are probably gonna happen and you can come back and win the game. Down here or down in the Dominican, everybody bunts all the time. Bunt to first, push bunts, drag bunts, sack bunts, anything like that. Bunting is a huge part of the game, and there's a couple different ways to look at how the season works. So I would break the season up into 3 parts. You have the first half of the regular season, you have the second half of the regular season, and then you have the playoffs. The first half of the regular season is kind of like guys coming from the Mexican League, guys trying to get a job, stuff like that. Like your starters probably won't be throwing over 90 miles an hour. You're gonna have a lot of lefties like 88, 89, couple righties, maybe 91, 92. Then the end of the second half, you kind of get some of the guys getting ramped up for spring training, kind of playing a little bit more. Your starters are closer to 94, 95. You're back into the bullpen, sometimes touching 100, stuff like that. And then playoffs is kind of where everybody gets ramped up for spring training, and so you'll see a lot of big leaguers go down there, get some reps, get some actual gameplay, and that's when you got a bunch of dudes, and it's a very different game playing in playoff baseball down there, especially when you got you know sometimes in the capital you're looking at an Aguilas Licey game, and there's 40,000 people in the stands, and people are climbing on nets and trying to get on the field and doing all this kind of stuff. It's just a very different style and way to play baseball.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more, maybe more of an emphasis on the entertainment aspect. Seems like it's a big cultural thing down there too. So I'm sure they definitely let that show. When you go down there to play, I'm sure you probably have some stuff that you're trying to work on. It's obviously very different from the MLB level competition. So how do you find ways to work on the specific things that you've identified, maybe technically or strategically, with the different level of competition?
So the level itself is like I would consider it like it's like like high double A, triple A kind of baseball. So it's actually it's closer to the big leagues than you think. Um, but I do use my True Media account. I watch video. I work on things in BP. I work on things in the cage. They have machines. They have all these different kind of equipment that we're able to use. It's not quite as up to standard as potentially an MLB team, but it's very similar in that it's baseball and there's a lot of things you can work on. They can track things. You can ask them to look over things. It's like for me when I went down there, the big thing that I wanted to focus on was swing decision. I wanted to try to walk more. I wanted to try to take better pitches. I wanted to see more pitches. I wanted to become a more stubborn hitter, a more aggressive to my zone kind of hitter, which I did for a couple games. I, struggled another couple games. It's hard to jump right into playoff baseball when you haven't been seeing live pitching very much. So I think when I go down there and I do that, I have to evaluate myself a little bit and try to focus on what I'm trying to work on, understand that the results will come, but seeing just kind of when you go down there that it still is baseball and it's still part of it, but the things that you're trying to work on is universal because it truly is still baseball at a high level.
Right. Yeah. You definitely want that skill set to translate regardless of the league or the level that you're playing at. Right. So I'm sure refining those skills within that context definitely should be something that translates back to the big league side when you get back here and get ready for the season. So that's good to hear. Speaking of getting ready for the season, you're a new Colorado Rocky. I think you were the very first guy that the team decided to sign this offseason. So that's pretty nifty. Rockies Nation probably doesn't know a ton about you. If you had to describe your play style in general for the fans, how would you describe Troy Johnston?
Gosh, that's a good question. I love that. That is such a good question. I would describe my play style as energetic and I like to win. I I will do whatever I need to do to win, whether that's moving a runner over, whether that's getting a bunt down, whether that's trying to get a runner in from third. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go out there and swing for the fences every time. I feel like I have been on winning teams. I've been on losing teams. I have been on teams that have been right in the middle, and I've had a lot of success in my pro career with the teams that I've been on. I've won championships in Double A and Triple A. Um, we had success in Miami, and when I come here and what I want to give to the Rockies and kind of show them that I can do is that I know how to win. I can contribute to the Rockies in the sense that I can do the little things right. I know when they need to happen, where they need to happen, kind of how they need to happen, and so I would call myself, if you want to put it in the something that's quotable, I'd say you know. A grinder that's going to do whatever it takes to win the game.
And I love that a lot because that's the type of player that we've been wanting more of over the last few seasons. I think the last time we were truly competitive was 2018, right? Made the playoffs, got swept in the NLDS. And since then, kind of a mixed rebuild, but not fully committed to it. And then that kind of just led to putting in some players that were more of fill in the hole type of guys. And so with that, the identity of the team kind of got lost and the small things started to take a back seat. And so that's something that's been emphasized a lot over the last few years as we finally committed to the rebuild. And so it's cool to see that that's something that you emphasize in your game because I think that'll fit well with where this team is trying to get back to and even go beyond in 2026 and even later on into this decade and beyond. Just from a sustainability perspective, we want to build an organization that can win consistently. And so that's obviously a skill set and a desire that this team is looking for. So that's super good to hear. But you made your debut in 2025 for Miami. You're gonna have to tell me how that was. Worked a long time to get to the big leagues, I'm sure. It finally happens. What did you think about your first cup of coffee at the major league level in 2025?
It taught me a lot of different things. When I got that call, I truly did not believe my coaches that they were calling me. I thought I was going to get called up in 23. I thought I was going to get called up in 24. Of course, it didn't happen, but truly, timing is everything. Timing is always right. Maybe I wasn't ready at that time, but I was ready when they called me. Had a little bit of success, but getting that call was, a dream come true. It pretty much meant that all the struggle that I had leading up to it in the minors and, in my life was worth it. All the hard work, all the late nights, all the stress, it was all worth it. And so even having the Colorado Rockies take a chance on me by claiming me off waivers, that meant a lot to me, and it was very exciting when I heard that I was even getting called by the Rockies. I got a funny story for you too after, um, but it meant so much to me and my family. And, my wife, she broke down in tears because we've talked about that day for so long, ever since we thought that it was going to be an option. Being a 17th rounder out of Gonzaga, usually those guys don't ever make it to the big leagues. The opportunity for them is small. It's not likely that they're going to be a big leaguer and they're going to make an impact. But for me, the fact that I even got there from where I started, I was even telling my wife, I was like, when I first got drafted, I'm like, I might play baseball for a year, I might play baseball for two, but I got to get my degree so I can have a backup plan. And she was like, okay, well, whatever you want to do. Then in 2022, we kind of realized that, maybe this is going to be a career and this is going to be something we want to pursue. So that's what we did. And, it was all worth it.
Yeah, looks like it certainly was. It's cool to hear the personal side of this also, because it's way too easy as fans to just focus on okay, this is the guy's productivity, this is who he's been at the minor league level, this is what we want to see him do now that he's got the opportunity to come play for the big league team. We think about it as a very baseball oriented thing, but at the end of the day, it's still your life. It's still a part of your story. And so there is a unique element of humanity behind all these stories also. And so it's really cool to see how this impacted your relationships as well as your excitement to finally achieve a dream that you'd had for an awful long time. So we love to see that, man. So you get called up, you're playing your first few games at the big league level. What was the largest adjustment for you between AAA and the MLB level? We hear so much about that as fans, how the game is significantly different in some ways. What was the largest change for you between AAA and the big leagues?
I think the biggest change was the information that was given. The pitchers had more information on you. You had more information on the pitchers. But I would say, I'll retract, but I would say the biggest thing was, and I know fans will hear this and they'll be like, that's not a real thing. But it's the imposter syndrome. I talk about it all the time on my podcast. I talk about it to anybody. The biggest change from going to AAA to the big leagues is thinking, I belong here. Once you get over that and you believe that you belong in the big leagues and you know you can have success and you know that this is something that you're meant to do, that's when it frees you up to actually have success. You see a lot of players that are going to be really good in the minors because it's comfortable. You don't have the pressure of, walking into Yankee Stadium or Boston and getting booed, and you don't have those pressures. It's not a thing. But when you go up to the big leagues, the money's different, the lifestyle's different, the pressure's different. You truly think of the imposter syndrome as, should I be here? Is this where I deserve to be? Is this something? And that's what a lot of players deal with, whether they talk about it or not. I'm a big proponent of talking about those kind of things because for me, it frees me up. It allows me to play more freely. It allows me to live my life clearly because truly, every single player deals with it, whether you're, you know, the hottest starter in, baseball, whether you've had a struggling start to your career, everybody deals with it at some point. I would say that's the biggest change from AAA to the big leagues is your mindset and kind of how you view the big leagues because, of course, the lights are brighter, the lifestyle is different. You get a lot more attention, a lot more. Your phone starts blowing up from people you haven't heard from in 15 years, and you're like, why are they talking to me now? Where were you 5 years ago when I was grinding in AAA? Something like that. But I would say that imposter syndrome and getting over that is probably the biggest change.
Oh, for sure. I can imagine. Well, I can't imagine because I've never played there, but we hear we hear so much about it as fans, right? Where it's like these guys are dealing with the reality that they've gotten the promotion to the premier level of baseball in the entire world, and they're dealing with this identity issue in some sort where it's like we're trying to grow and adapt to being MLB players, but we don't want to change who we were entirely at the minor league level because that's why we were promoted. We showed enough at the minor league level to get the bump up. And so dealing with that pressure to change and grow, but also not to change who you are is probably really significant in the mind of a lot of guys who get that promotion. So yeah, I can't imagine. That's pretty interesting stuff. But aside from that, you're starting to play. You play your first few games. You ended up playing about 44 games, I think, in 2025. Is there something that you wanted to go into the offseason technically to work on or fix that kind of showed itself at the big league level? We had, I don't know how many Rockies players you've reached out to yet since being claimed off waivers, but we had Braxton Fulford on our show last week. And he talked about a large adjustment for him is that he realized his swing wasn't allowing him to be able to catch up to some of the consistency that MLB pitchers were throwing at the major league level. From that perspective, not necessarily that MLB pitchers are significantly better, but that they're more consistent with using their stuff. Is there anything in your experience that kind of showed itself from a technical perspective as you faced big league pitching for the first time that you went into the offseason trying to work on?
So again, I'll kind of double down on what I was talking about with the Winter League, and our new general manager is really big into numbers, very similar to the Marlins with Bendix. And so if you go look at my Baseball Savant page, you look at we had interior numbers, we had all these different stuff with the Marlins that was telling us exactly where we need to get better. We're talking xWOBA, we're talking chase rate, we're talking walk rate, we're talking hard hit balls, exit velos, all this kind of stuff. I for the numbers that I'm looking at and the way that I can get better is my chase rate, my quality of contact in the zone, and my walk rate. And pretty much the chase rate and the walk rate are directly correlated. But I notice that when I'm swinging in the zone, I have a lot more success than when I'm swinging out of the zone. And weird, right? Never would have guessed. Never would have guessed. Weird. So, how can I be on time every single pitch to swing at my pitch? And so, you want to talk about the technicals, you want to talk about swings, you want to talk about all that. I can tell you right now that you can work as hard as you want in the offseason. You can do all the changes you want. You can work with a special hitting guy. You can do all of that. But right when you get thrown into spring training and all of a sudden all those pressures come in, you're playing at Salt River and the Dodgers are there and you got all this different stuff, things start to speed up and things need to change and things need to adjust. And your swing is going to look different in spring training than it is in May of the season. Like you're just going to adjust, you're going to develop, there's going to be differences. So, how can I go about and truly harness what I can control? And I can control swinging at better pitches, being on time, and making sure I'm in a good position to hit. And so if I can control those three things, I'm going to have a lot of success. But when I go out and I try to do more, like like I was talking about earlier, like anybody can go up to the plate and try to hit a home run. You're probably not going to have a lot of success doing that unless you're Barry Bonds, I guess. He tried to hit a home run every time. He did it a lot. He's very good. But if you look at his numbers, his chase rate was very low. He walked a lot. So he put himself in a very successful position by swinging at the pitches that he needed to swing at, the ones that he would have success at. And so for me, especially in Colorado, where you're facing big league pitchers, they're trying to get you out. If you take those borderline pitches, all of a sudden they're freaking out. Here comes a 2-0 fastball, 2-0 slider right down the middle. I can do damage on that. But if I put myself and I swing at a ball in the dirt, now I'm a 1. Okay, I take a fastball up and away. Now I'm 1-1. Okay, I swing at another ball in the dirt. Now it's 1-2. Not only have I chased 2 pitches, showing the pitcher that he can throw another ball in the dirt and I'm going to swing at it. But I'm also at a 1-2 count where I also could be 2-0, looking for something where he's trying to get back in the count, something I can drive, something I can do something with. So the more I can control the zone, the more I can focus on that, then I think that's going to help me be more successful come the season.
Mm. Yeah, it really is about controlling the things you can control. So
Yes.
it's cool that you mentioned that, because it's so easy to let the things you don't control shape your perspective. And if you're operating with a certain amount of fear about all these things that you can't control and can't predict or account for, it's very easy to just get stalled in your growth and development, because you're like, well, ultimately I don't have the control here over my own success in some sense. But when you change that perspective, all of a sudden you're putting yourself in a position to succeed by saying, okay, I know I don't control every aspect of this circumstance, but what can I focus on to put myself in the best position to succeed doing the things that I can't do? So that's a cool perspective that you have, as it pertains to your approach to just facing big league pitching. Something else that's interesting that I noted from looking at your Baseball Savant page, you didn't face off-speed pitches the most of all the pitches that you faced in your debut at the major league level, but that was the pitch type that you hit the best from a batting average perspective, interestingly enough. And so I'm always intrigued when batters hit off-speed the best of the three pitch types, fastball, breaking, and off-speed. Is that something that this approach that you're focusing on produces? Is that something like that you're looking for when you're up at the plate against pitchers, or is that just the kind of the way that's shaped out?
So for me, I feel like I've hit in so many different parts of the lineup. I've hit in so many different situations. I've always been just like every big leaguer. They're a 1 through 4 hitter usually. Most big leaguers are 1 through 4 hitters that have hit their whole career. For me, I think there's different situations to look for certain things. Runner on second with 1 out, 2 outs. There's a good chance you're not going to get a fastball. Runner on third, runners in scoring position, 1 out. There's a really, really high chance you're not going to get a fastball. And so playing those little kind of games, those little kind of stuff, but at the same time, they're like I said, the pitchers have a lot of numbers on me. They know that I slug off speed. That's the pitches I can really get under. I can really do stuff. For me, my whole thought process is fastballs go the other way. I'll just take my singles. If I hit it for a double, great, awesome. But when they throw an off speed and they throw it in the zone, that's something I can really drive. I can really, get the head out on because of course it's slower. All my timing works the same. So like, if I'm ready for a fastball going the other way, it's here. If I'm ready for an off speed, it's going to be out here. So I don't have to change my swing. I don't have to change my timing. I just have to change my approach. And so that's really the easier part for me to kind of go about. Yes, I've been working on hitting fastballs, of course, just like anything else. In my mind, that's the hardest pitch to hit in baseball is a very good, well located fastball. Sometimes even 100 miles an hour right down the middle is one of the hardest pitches to hit. And so even the statistics will tell you that. But in my mind, I think there's certain situations, and I like sitting on certain pitches. I like looking for certain pitches in certain counts. It locks me in. It tells me where it needs to start. It tells me where it needs to be. Um, I had a home run against Jack Leiter, and I talked to my hitting coach. I said, he's got this weird thing where he's like 70% first pitch curveball to lefties. And if you notice, I was really excited rounding the bases after my home run. I there's a runner on third. I was expecting a first pitch curveball. I just had good hands. Popped a single the other way for score the run. Great. Second at bat, I he threw me a first pitch fastball. So I was like, okay, weird. He hasn't thrown me the first pitch curveball. Whatever, no problem. Third at bat comes around. He throws the first pitch curveball. I was ready for it. I was sitting on it. I was waiting for it, and I ended up hitting it out. And I was so excited because sometimes things work out that way. Where I look at the scouting report, I look at what I want to hit, what I want to attack. I go in and I use traject. I practice it. I do something like that, and then it translates to the game. Sometimes my plan doesn't work out. That's baseball. It happens. They'll do something totally different. Maybe they are 80% slider, and then that day they throw 4 fastballs to me. It just kind of is what it is. But when you're talking about how I hit off speed better, sometimes I'm looking for those. And sometimes I will take fastballs right down the middle so that I will get to the off speed. Um, Sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But that's why some of the best hitters in baseball, they get out 7%, seven times out of 10.
Yeah, man. It's so interesting. And I'm a big stat head, and on this show, we're big stats people. And so I like the sort of nerdy side of the game. And so it's really cool to see how that shows up practically in an in-game situation and all the considerations that are being made. Because you really do get the ability to make those predictions a lot more accurately with all that information, right? And so that's how you can put yourself again in that position to control your success as much as you practically can. And so it's really cool to see how you've used that in your own experience and had some success with that against some pretty good pitchers. You mentioned fastballs being underratedly hard to hit at the major league level. This is something interesting that not a lot of fans even know about. So I'm curious to hear the player's perspective. And you played at BYU for a little bit also. So maybe this is something you dealt with at the higher altitude. It's higher altitude in Utah than a lot of other places in the country. Altitude impacts fastballs. And that's not something people talk about a lot. You hear about breaking balls and how breaking balls break less, but fastballs that ride also ride less, like 3 inches less, at least here in Colorado, in Denver. Is that something in the experiences that you've had facing pitchers at altitude who have good carry, a good ride on their fastball? Is that something that you noticed significantly during the course of your at bat, the lack of ride compared to sea level?
Well, even when I was playing in Colorado this year, in I think it was September, late August, something like that, is I noticed that significantly. I noticed nothing was moving. It was very different. It's not like when you're in Miami and all of a sudden, somebody's popping a 21 inches of vert and, they got then their curveballs, negative 20 inches of vert. It the plot was a lot closer together, the spray chart. And so I do think it's interesting. I I think that in Colorado, I think cutters and two seamers, something that goes this way, is going to play a lot more than something that goes vertical in depth, which I do understand that the front office has been talking about. They've been trying to work towards stuff like that, but trying to play to their strengths in Colorado as much as possible because, of course, offensively, it's one of the best hitting parks in the world, maybe the country at least, but maybe the world. Um, But I did notice that balls moved less. When I would see a cutter, it would just kind of hang up there. When I'd see a changeup, it would just kind of float. Stuff like that. It didn't have like the same bite it did down in Miami, or when we were in Texas, it didn't have the same movement. Stuff like that. So, but I also think that the stadium in Colorado is so big, the view is so nice. I think the actual visuals of the field when you're hitting is different, and I think it's easier to see at that field than maybe some of the others. I thought Texas was really hard. I thought the pitcher looked so tall on the mound. Like it looked like it was like straight down throwing at you, and they had guys with ride, and it looked like it was riding. It looked like it was moving 2 feet, but of course it wasn't. Um, I know there's other stadiums like that too, but I thought in Colorado, the views itself made it a lot easier to see pitches.
Yeah, that's interesting because, and you're right about the pitch types too. That's something we've talked about here. The sinkers, the sweepers, the gyro sliders, pitches like that are the pitches that work best here from a consistency perspective, going to and from altitude.
Yep.
So it's very interesting. Yeah, that's something that we hope the front office is working on from our perspective. As a hitter, though, you also have to, in playing in Colorado, you have to deal with the fact that you're doing that bouncing back and forth so much too, right? So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how you plan to adapt to playing in an environment where those pitches don't move as much and then going on the road to a place where you do experience a lot more of that break and that ride.
I think a lot of that is going to have to come from training, come from practice. Setting up machines to be really nasty movement, making it harder in your practice than it is during the game. So you're not just going in and you're seeing, a flat fastball, or you're seeing, a little gyro slider or something like that, something you'll see in Colorado, where now you're going to see the big, takeoff slider, you're going to see the big hammer curveball, you're going to see all these kind of stuff. I think the harder you make training, the closer you make the challenge point. I'm a big believer in the challenge point. We've talked about that with the Marlins. I thought it was a really cool concept, but the harder you make your training, the easier the game will be because you're going to be prepared for it.
Hmm, absolutely. Yeah, that's good stuff. I think when we fired our original coaching staff at the beginning of last year, a few games, well, about 40 games into the season, the new interim staff actually started working on some stuff like that too. I forget the specifics of what they did, but whatever they were doing from a machine perspective and a game prep perspective actually did help the guys account for that difference a lot better. So it'll be interesting to see how they carry that over into 2026. You'll obviously get to know better than I will, but it'll be very interesting to see how those changes are made so that the team can carry a lot of that offensive production at home on the road as well. So that's good stuff, man. Final question I have for you. 2026, it's on the horizon. We're about a month and a half away from spring training now. And this organization is in an interesting point in its history. They're kind of building back new, changing a lot of processes, rebuilding culture. Talked a lot about productivity on the field stuff from a practical perspective, a gameplay perspective. But from a cultural perspective, as the team continues retooling and rebuilding its culture, how do you see yourself contributing to a positive, sustainable culture for this team going forward?
So that's one thing I pride myself on. I feel like if I can make an impact off the field, if I can impact one player, one day, something, I can be the best teammate I possibly can. I can help somebody. I can do something like that, whether it's picking up the cage for them, whether it's, playing cards with them, whether it's, getting them a water from if I can do anything to be the best teammate that I possibly can be, then I won the day. And that's kind of the impact that I have. I can go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts on the field. Yeah, people aren't probably going to be happy about that. But if I was a great teammate that day, that was a win. If I cheered somebody on, if I, you know, got in there and maybe I made a great defensive play, but of course I didn't help offensively. I was a good teammate that day. Um, Focusing on the team and not just myself, you can get away from that when you're in the big leagues because a lot of money's getting thrown around. There's contracts, there's a lot of different things, people going in arbitration, people trying to get free agent deals. They're always thinking about next year. For me, I'm just starting. So I want to win. And so if I can be the best teammate that I possibly can be, cheer somebody up, make their day, crack a joke, and maybe they remember it for, a month on, something like that. I think that's going to be a win for me. And I think that's what I want to go into 2026 being is, if they have an award for the best teammate, I want to win it. So I think that that's what I can bring to the Rockies this year. And hopefully I can bring, good vibes and good people.
Yeah, man. Well, I can't wait to see it. We can't wait to see it overall as a fan base. We're typically more optimistic than most other Rockies fans here on this show. So I think this team is exactly like Warren Schaefer says it can be. A lot better, a lot quicker than people think. And so it's good to hear the perspectives of guys like you who are newer to this team, newer to the league overall, and the approach that you guys are going to bring to this team as we attempt to eventually reach the pinnacle, something we haven't done here in Denver ever. Well, we came close in 2007, I suppose, but that's a story for another time. But Troy, thank you very much for hopping on the show with me. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Oh, thank you so much. Go Rockies.